We heard Rick's thoughts on what features of Marx's theories are necessary to understand the evolution of Marxism in the West, and what we need to understand about Marx to evaluate today's economic situation. But I wanted to pose the same question to you just because it would be nice to hear your own take on things.
Well, Richard talked about the great forgetting of all this, the great absence of it. I think the best way to look at this is what's happening in the BRICS countries right now. They're trying to create an alternative to what Western Europe and America has done to them. They're trying to really design a new society very much in the way that the classical economists were trying to free their society from feudalism, from landlords and finance and monopolists. Yeah, you can see what the BRICS are already talking about. They want to get rid of the fact that of colonialism. They want to get rid of the fact that foreign countries have come in and taken control of their land for the land rent and natural resources for the natural resource rent, the oil rent, the mineral rent, the deforestation, and they want to deal with the debt problem, that there are all of the fruits of their growth have to be paid to the Western creditors in the form of interest, and they have to subject themselves to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, saying, we're going to withdraw credit from you, we're going to end up bankrupting your balance of payments and therefore your exchange rates if you don't follow the neoliberal laws that we want. If you try to tax foreign owners of your natural resources, if you want to fine the oil companies for when they're creating pollution, then that's against the international investment laws, and you have to compensate them for any of the fines, so that you have to bear all of the costs of the damage that they do to your economy. These are the problems that they're faced with, and in a way they're the same problems that Western Europe had. And the irony is that these problems are caused by the progressive forces of capitalism getting rid of rent and finance and monopoly. But as they colonized, they created these very same problems. The last thing that England and France and Germany and America wanted was for other countries to develop the way they did, for other countries to free themselves from the rentier income. Well, I haven't seen any discussion at all among the BRICS of Marxism or classical economics. What they're doing today is trying to reinvent the wheel. But they're trying to reinvent the wheel without realizing that it was already invented 200 years ago in the classical economics. And so when Richard talks about what they're going to help themselves reinvent it by understanding Marx, what he means is Marx is including all of the ideas of Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill and the other Ricardo and the classical economists, the whole analytic system that they have for what kind of income is productive and necessary and what kind of income is predatory, exploitative, and we don't need. There's no discussion at all in the BRICS so far of, for instance, taxing away land rent, nationalizing the land, and yet that was the first item of the Communist Manifesto that discussed. In a way, you could say that the Communist Manifesto could be taken as the lead-off point as what the BRICS are going to be doing when they're meeting later in October in Kazakhstan. And yet, I haven't seen any discussion, and I'm in contact with a lot of people who play a role in China, Russia, and other BRICS countries. And Richard and I are both on many different international discussion groups saying this, but we have no idea about the extent to which our ideas are picked up, because in a way we're being dismissed as part of the same kind of communism that ended up in Stalinism. and they're not looking at China really as being Marxist in this, and the Chinese are not making any attempt to create a dealing with land rent, natural resource rent, or finance, because that hasn't been part of their version of socialism with Chinese characteristics. And in fact, in 1979, the U.S. Department of Education had me as a consultant, and they brought me to a meeting with the World Bank, and I was discussing my discussions with the Chinese representative of the World Bank, and he said, what you're saying is wonderful. We've got to bring you to Shanghai to discuss. There's a Futures Institute there. Sounds just like you'd like. Would you like to go there? And I said, yes. And the good thing is that I'm a Marxist too. And his face blanched. He said, oh dear, I urge you not to go. If you go, you may not come out alive. He said the one thing they don't want is any Marxist, because for them, Marxism was what happened in Russia. It's bureaucratic collectivism. It's the state that doesn't let any new economic policies, Lenin called it, any private enterprise being innovative or sensing what the market needs, or new technologies of electricity or any of the others. So he said, best if you don't go. And I realized that I was not welcomed at Peking University's School of Marxism, and didn't stay there after 2 years, because I realized that their idea of Marxism, as I mentioned, was the politics and general economic analysis, which they pasted as a label on it. And as Richard said, there are very few other Marxists. There are many people who've gone to Marxist schools, like where Richard taught at Amherst, Massachusetts, but not all of the graduates in Marxism understood Marxism. And he and I are pretty much by ourselves. I know there are some people who are very sympathetic to us, but I don't know anyone else who's still alive, and we're in our 80s, who have this background. And in order to understand Marxism in Volume 2 and 3, you really have to study all of classical economics, because it was all part of an organic development. That was a development. It wasn't getting rid of anything. It wasn't Marx against the free marketers. It was Marx he shared their idea of a free market, and a free market to Adam Smith and the other classical economists was a market free from economic rent. You don't have a landlord class anymore, because there will be land rent. Some locations are worth more than others, but that rent will be used as a tax base. We don't have to tax labor's wages. We don't have to tax the industrialist's profit. We'll tax away economic rent where it can't be avoided. And where there doesn't have to be rent, we'll make sure that natural monopolies like water and sewer, or education, or healthcare are not in private hands, so there are not going to be any private monopolists. Well, in a way, China has made the great socialist Marxist advantage in keeping money as a public utility. That really is the key. Without we were discussing before how Marx expected banks to become the economic planners of industrial capitalism, because they were looking for efficiency. But what is destroying industrialism in the United States and Europe for the last 30 years, 40 years, has been the financial system, the banks, because the banks are not trying to support industry. You can make much more money by deindustrializing the country than you can by industrializing it. You can make much more money borrowing money from a bank, buying a corporation, smashing it up, selling off parts. If you're a hospital, you immediately sell off the land to a real estate company, and then you lease it back, and you use the money you get for this land you've sold to pay a special dividend to the financial managers who take it over. And when Richard talked about the industrialists today not playing a productive role, the heads of the companies are not really the CEO, it's the chief financial officer. So the industrial capitalism itself has been taken over by the financial system that lives in the short term, that was exploitative, and has ended up deindustrializing the United States and Europe. Well, this is obviously not the way that the BRICS countries want to know, but the question is, to what extent are they going to let Western banks come in, as opposed to realizing that if you can control the banks, you really can control the allocation. Now, Marx was an optimist about capitalism more than anyone else at the time. He was saying how the banks will develop, capitalism will evolve into socialism, and banks will play a leading role in this. Well, today banks are playing the leading role in, as I said, in deindustrializing, as preventing the evolution into socialism. And that really is the fight between the United States and the dollar standard against the BRICS countries. And one of the key things that they're talking about is de-dollarizing. They realize that de-dollarizing means getting rid of the whole legacy of foreign dollar debt that their countries have been loaded down with by being forced by their former colonial powers, acting through the new colonial power, the World Bank and the IMF, to follow essentially predatory monopoly rent-seeking enterprises owned by foreigners that take the rent and the whatever profits there are from the monopolies that are privatized and send it to the United States, England, or the European foreign investors there. Now, Richard and I have discussed how this process evolved in the West, but I don't see a similar discussion taking place in all of the discussions about where are the BRICS going to go and how are they going to develop this. They realize that what we're seeing today is a split in civilization, in the same way that you could say industrial capitalism was a split in civilization. It was a split from capitalism, from feudalism, into the post-feudal epoch. You free itself from all of this useless overhead. Well, how are the BRICS countries going to free themselves from colonialism? It's the same economic analysis, value, price, and rent theory, with the price being the excess of overvalue, with the excess of price over value, the free lunch being economic rent. Well, neoclassical economics and University of Chicago monetarism says just what Milton Friedman said: there is no free lunch. But finance capitalism is all about a free lunch. That's what the economy is all about. And that's why, as I mentioned before, we Marxists did very well on Wall Street as economic futurists, as forecasters, as explaining what was happening, because we knew it was about a free lunch. This is not creating value, it's creating rent. And once you realize that distinction, you have a whole different idea of capitalism and the laws of motion, as Marx said in Volume 1 of Capital. Well, what are the laws of motion of finance capitalism? They're actually the same laws of feudalism. They want to entrench a landlord class, or except now it's the financial multinational corporations that own the land, that own the mineral rights and the oil rights and the forest rights, and have forced the public infrastructure that's been privatized, control the pension funds. That's not a public funding. They're all privatized now. They're being told to go the way that the United States is doing. There's when I went 3 times to lecture before the Duma in Russia in 1984 and 5 to try to say, look, you're going to have an explosion of housing prices, and that's going your oligarchs are going to do what they've just done to Norilsk Nickel. You know, they're going to take the mineral rent, natural resource rent, instead of the state taking it. Instead of using this, rent income that you can certainly sell nickel and platinum and oil for much more than the cost of production. But instead of using this rent to finance your industrialization, lower lower the cost of living, you can turn over all of the apartments you have to the current owners. Free. Now you own the apartment. Then they won't have to pay rent. You'll have the lowest cost economy in the world. This is exactly, the rent should be a public utility, and that's one way that you'll become more competitive. Well, needless to say, the politicians who invited me over to address the Duma found themselves de-elected by, he said, American advisors came over as to how to steal elections, just like they do in the United States. Their idea of democracy was the financial powers controls the election. It's really an oligarchy, and so I didn't have a role to play in Russia's restructuring itself along productive lines, Marxist lines. I tried to bring Marxism to Russia and I failed, to make a long story short.
That's pretty ironic.
Yeah, and there really, you have Richard and me, but there are not enough of us to go around to the whole world. And you're talking to us, Nima's talking to us, other people talk to us, but not the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or NBC or CNN.